2019年度第3回実用英語技能検定1級リスニングテスト
The listening test for the Grade 1 examination is about to begin. Listen carefully to the directions. You will not be permitted to ask questions during the test. This test has 4 parts. All of the questions in these 4 parts are multiple choice questions. For each question, choose the best answer from among the 4 choices written in your test booklet. On your answer sheet, find the number of the question and mark your answer. You are permitted to take notes for every part of this listening test. Now, here are the directions for Part 1. In this part, you will hear 10 dialogues, number 1 through number 10. Each dialogue will be followed by 1 question. For each question, you will have 10 seconds to choose the best answer and mark your answer on your answer sheet. The dialogue and the question will be given only once.
Now we will begin the Grade 1 listening test. Number 1.
The election's a week away, honey, and I'm still undecided.
Well, both candidates are strong, but I'm voting for Jacobs.
Jacobs has definitely been around a while.
Yeah, he has a long track record of achievements.
Still, I'm impressed with Potter, even though she's young.
Quite frankly, I don't think she's ready to take on so much responsibility.
Maybe, but her idealism is refreshing. We could use a change.
I agree that Potter would shake things up, but in politics, that's not always a good idea.
Question. What does the man say about the election?
Number 2.
Mark, I think it's time to fix that dent in the rear bumper.
But honey, it's not even that noticeable.
It looks awful. Anyway, our insurance will pay for the repairs.
True, but then our insurance premiums will go up.
How do you know that?
That's what the company told me when I called to ask about it. I was responsible for the damage, remember? I backed into that parked car.
Oh, that's right.
Question. Why is the man reluctant to fix the car?
Number 3.
I hope you enjoyed your stay at our resort, Mr. Barker.
I sure did. My wife and I are thinking of returning in October. If we stayed for an entire week, would it be possible to get a better deal on our room rate?
October is not our peak season, so it's probably not out of the question. Let me talk to the manager, and I'll get back to you before your airport limousine arrives.
Thanks. I'd appreciate anything you could do.
Question. What does the woman imply?
Number 4.
How was the negotiating seminar you went to last month?
I learned so much. Wish I hadn't wasted so many years trying to learn this stuff on my own. The trainers really knew what they were doing.
Have you had a chance to put your new skills into practice yet?
As a matter of fact, I just closed a deal with a big electronics manufacturer. The stuff I learned at the seminar made a big difference.
Question. What does the woman imply?
Number 5.
How's your studying going, Terry? Are you ready for the Spanish test?
It's tough, Kate. I'm really making an effort to get through the vocabulary list, but nothing seems to stick.
It's not easy to memorize so many words, is it?
That's one way of putting it. I guess all I can do is keep at it.
You might want to change your focus. Mr. Sharp said the grammar section is worth more points.
Really? Maybe that's the way to go then.
Question. What does the woman imply? Number 6.
Keith, I need your opinion.
Sure, Layla.
I just got my annual evaluation. Lots of positive comments, but I was passed over for promotion again.
What about other staff who were hired at the same time as you?
If they're still here, they've all moved up already. As it happens, they're all men.
I see. Well, if there aren't any complaints about your work, perhaps you need to be a bit more upfront about your expectations.
I guess I can try.
Question. What does the man suggest the woman do?
Number 7.
Sarah, Mr. Lee is flying in from Singapore today. Have you made arrangements to pick him up?
Yes, I'll drive to the airport to get him. We should be back at the office by 4.
Why don't you take him directly to his hotel so he can take it easy?
But I scheduled a meeting for you both at 4:30 and dinner from 7. Should I cancel them?
Yes, it's a long flight. Besides, he'll be here until Friday. We can talk business later.
Question. What does the man suggest doing? Number 8.
Hey, Andrea. It's been a while. How's the family?
Good, actually. You remember my rebellious son?
How could I forget?
Well, he somehow managed to graduate from college and land a pretty good job.
Sounds like he's really changed.
He has. In fact, he called last week to tell me that his boss is very pleased with his performance. If he plays his cards right, he could be promoted in the not-too-distant future.
That's great news.
Question. What do we learn about the woman's son?
Number 9.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a dog around the house?
Yes, and walking it would help us stay fit. But one condition. I want it to be from a local animal shelter.
Really? I was hoping to get a puppy from a reputable breeder.
But the prices can be outrageous, and there are already so many dogs without homes. You know that thousands of shelter dogs are put to sleep every year, right?
Yeah, I know, but I've heard nasty rumors about shelter dogs.
Like what exactly?
Well, that they're temperamental and aggressive. And I heard of one guy who got a shelter dog, and it cost him $2,000 to treat it for some kind of genetic illness.
Look, I'm sure there are a few horror stories, but most shelters make sure their dogs all have medical exams and are observed for behavioral issues before being handed to new owners. And remember, the neighbor's Labrador and Uncle Jimmy's dog Charlie were both shelter dogs.
I get the point. I'm just a bit worried, that's all.
Fair enough. We'll be very careful before we make a decision.
Okay, let's have a look online for more information and then head to a local shelter this weekend.
Question. What is the woman's opinion?
Number 10.
I wish we had more support from Jack.
I know. After all, he's supposed to be the director of our department, but he's always off at some conference or entertaining clients. He doesn't seem to have a clue about what's going on here on a daily basis.
That's true, guys, but that might not be a bad thing in the long run.
How so?
Well, think about it. We're pretty much left to ourselves. It's given us the chance to develop some innovative strategies for improving our productivity without his interference.
Yes, but look at our budget. We're underfunded, and Jack's the only one who can really do anything about that.
Well, the main problem I have is that he hires people who don't have any relevant experience for the actual position. Imagine what we could do with appropriate staffing.
Remember, though, he agreed to hire Cynthia. She's been a great asset.
True, but Jack also takes all the credit for our successes.
Sure, that's frustrating. but he's not the first boss I've worked for who does that. The bottom line is that we know what needs to be done for clients, and we're doing a great job with that.
Question. What is one thing the woman says about the director?
Here are the directions for Part 2. In this part, you will hear 5 passages, A through E. Each passage will be followed by 2 questions, number 11 through number 20. For each question, you will have 10 seconds to choose the best answer and mark your answer on your answer sheet. The passage and the questions will be given only once. Now, let's begin.
A. Biochar. Biochar is a type of agricultural fertilizer that looks like charcoal. It is produced by burning plants and agricultural waste under extremely low oxygen conditions. Then it is ground up and added to soil. Supporters say biochar also benefits the environment. This is because when biochar is produced, the carbon in the plants and waste becomes trapped in the biochar. Additionally, it is claimed that when added to soil, biochar absorbs more carbon. This prevents carbon, which contributes to the greenhouse effect, from being released into the atmosphere. Some people have therefore been calling for biochar to be produced on a massive scale to combat global warming. However, the claims regarding biochar's agricultural and environmental benefits are mainly based on observations of small-scale traditional agricultural practices and lab experiments. Several large field trials came to a different conclusion. First, they showed that in many cases, when biochar was buried, carbon levels in the soil were generally unchanged. Second, the field trials showed that biochar's effects on crop production were at best inconclusive. While more research is definitely needed, biochar may not be a magic solution for food security and climate change after all.
Questions. Number 11. What do supporters believe about biochar? Number 12. What did the field trials suggest about biochar? B. A new bandage. A company has created a product that is faster and more efficient at stopping blood flow from serious wounds than ordinary gauze bandages are. The new bandage is manufactured with plant fibers that have been modified in the laboratory so they can hold large amounts of blood. When applied over a wound, the bandage turns into a gel that helps prevent blood from escaping. By holding blood in place, this gel improves the body's natural ability to form a clot, the mass of thickened blood that forms over a wound, and halts bleeding. This new product, therefore, has enormous potential for preventing blood loss in patients. Another remarkable feature of the bandage is that, as the wound heals, it dissolves and is absorbed by the body within a week or so. Ordinary gauze bandages also soak up blood and slow or stop bleeding, but they must be removed eventually. Taking them off can disturb the clot that is formed over the wound, which can cause bleeding to restart. The new bandage does not have this drawback.
Questions. Number 13. What is one thing the new bandage does? Number 14. What is one special feature of the new bandage?
C. Planned obsolescence. For years, consumer rights groups have claimed that some product manufacturers use what is called planned obsolescence to boost sales of their products. Planned obsolescence is a way of intentionally limiting the lifespan of products by, for example, manufacturing them so they are likely to break down after a few years. The rights groups say that another element of this strategy involves manufacturing companies creating obstacles, which make it difficult to get items repaired. This can be done by not supplying repair manuals, by limiting repairs to licensed shops, or by making it difficult to obtain replacement parts. Faced with such obstacles, consumers often choose to simply replace older items with new models. Recently, many people have been fighting back against what they see as unfair business practices. Some have created websites giving consumers tips on repair techniques, while others are lobbying for regulations that require manufacturers to provide repair information and replacement parts. Companies are starting to listen. In 2014, some car manufacturers agreed to make repair information available to independent garages, and advocates now hope other manufacturers will follow their example.
Questions. Number 15. What do consumer rights groups say some companies do? Number 16. What is one way people are trying to fight the problem? D. The Gini coefficient. Statisticians who want to measure a country's prosperity tend to rely on gross domestic product, or GDP, but this measure is not perfect. While a country with a high GDP is considered affluent, that country's population may be composed of a small number of the super rich and a large number of poor people. Another measure, which indicates the degree of social inequality within a country, has come into use. Known as the Gini coefficient, it is a number ranging from a low of 0 to a high of 1. 0 represents perfect equality of income, and 1 indicates that all wealth is owned by a single person. By considering both the GDP figure and the Gini coefficient, it is possible to gain a more accurate measure of the true prosperity of a nation's citizens. As well as indicating wealth distribution, the Gini coefficient is also a reliable indicator of social cohesion. Countries with greater income equality tend to have lower crime, and their citizens report greater levels of overall well-being. One way a country can lower its Gini coefficient is by taxing the rich and redistributing the income to poorer citizens.
Questions. Number 17. Why can GDP be an imperfect measurement? Number 18. What is one thing we learn about countries with a low Gini coefficient?
E. Clothing matters. It is well known that the clothes people wear can influence the way others react to them. But psychologist Adam Galinsky believes clothes can have an even more profound effect on the wearer. To determine if clothes can affect an individual's psychological processes, he conducted an experiment in which subjects were split into two groups. All the subjects wore identical white coats, but the symbolic meaning of the coats was different for each group. One group was told the coats they were wearing were used by doctors, while the other group was told the coats were used by painters. When the subjects were given cognitive tests requiring skills which are associated with physicians' work, those who thought they were wearing doctor's coats performed substantially better. Real-world data seems to support Galinsky's beliefs. For example, female prisoners at Utah Department of Corrections facilities were frequently disruptive and disobedient. Prison administrators believed the dull, plain-looking prison clothing was part of the problem, so they gave the women attractive new uniforms. Inmate discipline improved significantly after this rule change. Observers theorize that the original uniforms intended as punishment identified the women as prisoners, and they acted accordingly. However, when the inmates could present themselves differently, their self-perception was transformed.
Questions. Number 19. What does Adam Galinsky's study suggest? Number 20. What was one result of the prison administrator's decision?
Here are the directions for Part 3. In this part, you will hear 5 passages, F through J. The passages represent real-life situations and may contain sound effects. Each passage will have one question, number 21 through number 25. Before each passage, you will have 10 seconds to read the situation and question written in your test booklet. After you hear the passage, you will have 10 seconds to choose the best answer and mark your answer on your answer sheet. The passage will be given only once. Now, let's begin.
F. You have 10 seconds to read the situation and question number 21.
To be honest, you're a bit late getting started. You should already be doing some detailed research on your topic or working on the grant application paperwork. But since you're unsure about your research focus, you need to choose a professor as an advisor and then work it out. A topic that you choose after simply reading journal articles might not satisfy the grant organizations. A good professor in your field will know what areas are currently in demand, and they should support you throughout the program. Be careful, though. Some professors may be too busy to give you guidance, so don't automatically go to one you already know. You should talk to current students first and get some details about each professor before approaching them. Once you've done that, I'd recommend contacting the local government just to confirm what the grant requirements are.
Now mark your answer on your answer sheet.
G. You have 10 seconds to read the situation and question number 22.
The hospital's maternity ward is the most popular option, and your insurance would cover everything. You'd visit your baby for feedings several times a day, but she would have to remain in the nursery. Your insurance would also cover the next option, which is the in-hospital birth center. It's staffed by midwives and offers natural childbirth, and there is quick access to hospital facilities in case of emergency. The baby would be moved to the hospital nursery for monitoring after the birth, but you would be able to visit several times a day. Now, a private birthing center would offer on-site physicians, and you could keep your baby with you. However, your insurance only covers 50% of the cost, which is $5,000. Since you're in good health, having a midwife help you give birth at home is another option. That would cost $3,000. But insurance would cover half, and of course you get to stay with your baby.
Now mark your answer on your answer sheet.
H. You have 10 seconds to read the situation and question number 23.
We'll be short a marketing manager once you leave for Japan. I've been considering Victoria from sales as your replacement. However, I just learned she'll be moving into a sales manager position in a month. As you know, Alberto's next in line in our department, but I haven't been impressed with his organizational skills. Another option is to use a recruitment agency to locate an outside candidate, but that process would take at least 3 months. Coincidentally, Evelyn Sutherland, your predecessor, contacted me out of the blue last week. She'd consider returning to our company if we can meet her salary and benefit requirements. It's a stretch, but I think it's doable. I'd like you to follow up on this with personnel. Remember that we need someone in place at least a month before you leave, so you can get them up to speed.
Now mark your answer on your answer sheet.
I. You have 10 seconds to read the situation and question number 24.
OK, here's your custom-fitted mouthpiece. Put a small amount of this whitening gel in the mouthpiece. Initially keep the mouthpiece in for only 30 minutes at a time, as your teeth will be sensitive. After a week, you can use it for 60 minutes. After each session, rinse your mouth with water. In about a month, Dr. Parkinson will want to see how it's going. I see you've already scheduled that appointment. If you have implants, keep an eye on your progress. The gel does not affect the colour of implants, so if you go too far with the whitening, your natural teeth won't match them anymore. You can decrease the time you use the mouthpiece or stop if you are concerned about this. Finally, we've included some desensitizing cream. Apply it to your teeth if you have any discomfort.
Now, mark your answer on your answer sheet.
J. You have 10 seconds to read the situation and question number 25.
The Australian government encourages investment by non-residents and foreigners in various types of real estate, including undeveloped land, newly built residences, and properties requiring redevelopment. Regardless, you must acquire approval from the Foreign Investment Review Board beforehand. You can do this through the board's website by clicking on the link and then filling out the online application form. Prior to that, however, you need to know what kind of investment you'll make. My recommendation would be to make an off-the-plan purchase, which is a contract to buy a property before the house has actually been built. Once you've identified a property, you'll need to list it on the application for board approval that I mentioned. When you actually make the purchase, you're required to obtain an Australian tax file number, which you'll need in order to fulfill tax obligations.
Now mark your answer on your answer sheet.
Finally, here are the directions for Part 4. In this part, you will hear an interview. The interview will be followed by 2 questions, number 26 and number 27. For each question, you will have 10 seconds to choose the best answer and mark your answer on your answer sheet. The interview and the questions will be given only once.
This is an interview with Rob Russell, a mental health counsellor and emotional support coach.
Rob, thanks for joining us on Careers in Focus.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
So, some people may feel that by seeing a coach, they've failed in some way. How would you respond to that?
I think that this is something that hopefully quite soon, but at some point in the future, will become a non-question. So you take somebody like who is working really hard, right? They're working too many hours and they don't see their family as much as they'd like to. They've probably developed a few unhealthy lifestyle habits like drinking or smoking or whatever, and they start to get stomach pains, right? A stomach ulcer or whatever. Go to the doctor, like diagnosed with a stomach ulcer. That person does not feel like they failed in any way. Like they're not made to feel that. And in fact, it can be almost a kind of badge of honor, like been working so hard that I got a stomach ulcer, right? So why somebody who, for example, gets depressed or just develops some kind of psychological challenge should be made to feel like they've failed because for something which probably happened through no fault of their own, I think it is at some point soon when attitudes evolve and prejudices kind of lift, it will be ridiculous to make that distinction.
So society needs to be educated about this then?
I think that's really important, yeah.
Okay. Do most companies or schools or colleges do enough to provide emotional support to their employees or their students?
Most organizations that I have had contact with, they don't pay enough attention to the emotional side. So technically, you go into a company, there's computers for everyone, the internet's all set up. There's some training about how to use that. There's tech support if you get in real trouble, right? Whereas the emotional side of things, which is very stressful for people, right? I mean, just dealing with relationships at work, dealing with a difficult colleague, dealing with your own kind of challenges on a day-to-day basis, I think is probably the main stress for the majority of people. To parallel the technical support that people get, you need emotionally intelligent managers who can create a basic, kind of healthy and emotional workplace.
Right. What kind of person makes a good coach in your experience?
I think some people who are naturally just very emotionally intelligent don't make the best coaches because it's just too easy for them. They can't understand why other people struggle. So you certainly need to be, I think, to be emotionally intelligent and to be aware of what it means to be emotionally intelligent. You don't necessarily have to be the most kind of skilled person at human relationships because it's actually important to. So empathy, I think, is one of the key skills, basically. And in order to empathize, it kind of helps not to have been perfect yourself and to have had your own struggles, I think. So some experience, I think, of overcoming difficulties is important.
This has really been interesting. I think your work is so important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions. Number 26. What is Rob's opinion about people with psychological challenges? Number 27. What is one thing Rob says about being an emotional support coach?
Your time is up. Stop writing and wait quietly until the answer sheets have been collected.